Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you guys? So I hope you are in a good health and be happy, stay with your family and continue study. So before we proceed with our new topic on sukuk, so I would like to just do some recap on our previous discussion, which is on the money market. Which is on the money market. So money market, as you know, the functions of money market is basically to provide the liquidity for the banking institutions in running their day-to-day business. But at the same time, the characteristic or nature of the money market is in the form of short term. So it can be from overnight to 12 months. Overnight 12 months. So that is the nature of money market, and we have discussed some of the instruments that is available for the money market, such as the treasury bills, and then we have government investment issues. We have also repo, repurchase agreements, and we have CDs, which is negotiable certificate of deposits, and also commercial papers and bankers acceptance. So now we would like to move on our discussion on sukuk. But before we discuss about sukuk, so another alternative funding avenue for the corporate entities and the government is also known as the capital market. So capital market. So capital market is basically a market which allows a fundraising entity such as the corporate companies and also the government to reach a wider investor base, and thus enjoying a larger funding amount at a competitive rate. So in general, the capital markets categorized or comprised of two main components. First one is the debt market, and the second one is the equity market. Equity market. So sukuk falls under the category of debt market. Under the debt market, and it can be traded in the secondary market also, which means after the primary issuance of the sukuk, so the sukuk holders can sell its sukuk to the secondary market. So what is actually an equity market? So equity market is basically an equities, shares which are traded in the for example, in the case of Malaysia, it is traded in BSKL, Bursa Saham Kuala Lumpur. So what does it mean by sukuk? So sukuk is basically, if we see it from the perspective, we can sukuk is a plural of sak. Plural of sak, where it is a paper. So it's basically a papers, a set of papers representing financial obligations which arise from trade and other commercial activities. So according to IOF, so sukuk is a certificate of equal value representing undivided shares in ownership of tangible assets, usufruct, and services. So it is basically certificates of ownership. Certificates of ownership on certain assets, on assets. The assets can be tangible assets or can be in the form of usufruct, or it can be also in the form of services. So that is how IOF defines sukuk. So whenever a sukuk holds, an investor bought a sukuk certificate, so that certificate represents the ownership of the sukuk holders on the assets that underlies the sukuk transaction. Similar definition can be found by the IFSB, whereby the sukuk can be defined as certificates that represent the holder's proportionate ownership in an undivided part of an underlying asset, where the holder assumes all rights and obligations to such assets. So it put some additional information which related to the sukuk holders' rights on and obligations on the assets. This means the IFSB put some stress on the issue of rights and obligations on the assets, whereas the Securities Commissions of Malaysia, so Securities Commission put a simple definition of sukuk, which refers to documents or certificates which represents this document and certificates represents the value of the assets. So whenever the sukuk holders hold the documents or the sukuk certificates, so it is tantamount to he owning the value of the assets. So that's how different authoritative institution define sukuk. So if we compare the three definitions above, you can say that the definition provided by the Securities Commission is the broadest and it encompasses the other two definitions. It's more comprehensive in the sense that it covers both definition by the IOF and also the IFSB. However, there is some differences in the type of assets. So because sukuk is issued based on assets, so the difference between all these three jurisdictions is in terms of type of asset that can qualify under the global standard setting bodies definition and the Securities Commission's definition. So IOF and the IFSB is basically a global standard setting bodies. So in this case, the IOF and IFSB do not recognize financial assets such as receivables as assets. So receivables, according to IOF and IFSB, could not qualify as an underlying assets of a tradable sukuk, whereby the Securities Commissions allows a receivable to be considered as the assets. So we will see the detailed discussion of the issues in our 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 next few slides. So that's all related to the definition of sukuk. Thank you very much.